Welcome to Clientology, the art and science of client getting. In this podcast, we're going to discuss how you can attract, convert, and deliver. So attract is how do you attract your dream clients while simultaneously repelling nightmare clients? And convert, we're converting those perfect prospects into dream clients. And lastly, under deliver, we're going to focus on topics around how do we deliver wow experiences. The theme throughout is how do we become more referable? How do we build referral programs and deliberately have systems that work to bring us a steady stream of perfect prospects and dream clients? Welcome to the show. Our guests are all experts in their field and they've agreed to share their insights with my audience. I hope you enjoy and I look forward to your comments and feedback.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. And today I'm really excited. I am talking to my dear friend, Joey Vitale. Joey is the founder of Indie Law, but today we're actually going to talk about a new passion project of his. Welcome, Joey.
Oh my gosh, Jeff, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor. Always a pleasure to chat with you, buddy.
Well, you and I are going to have some fun today. And so let's talk about globally vetted VAs. What was the stimulus behind that? What sparked that idea? And what are you working on right now that our listeners will be excited about?
Yeah, well, I'll try and give you the short but powerful version of the story, Jeff. So as you hinted at, my main focus is and has been my law firm, Indie Law, which is a trademark law firm. And I spent the past 5 or 6 years building and scaling what that can look like. I say that just for context because over the past few years, as we've been working hard to make that the best law firm we can be, I've been joining other groups and attending conferences and stuff with other law firm owners. And one thing that I found the more that I got to know those communities is that there was a real sense in those communities of how can we learn from each other. And if you've ever been in a network or group like that where everybody shares a similar type of practice area and they're all wanting to help each other and they're all business owners, what tends to happen is they look to the audience of members in that community and say, hey, what's a topic around business that you can learn and speak to? Kind of how can we provide each other's kind of best practices? Because of all of that, people started saying at these law firm owner events, Joey, we want you to speak. We've noticed that you've kind of tapped into this gold mine when it comes to VAs. Can you share how that's going? And so I started going on stages and podcasts, not really to the business community at large, but to certain different pockets of law firm owners saying, here's what I'm doing to create a dream team of overseas VAs. Because over half of our team at this point is overseas administrative level teammates, either in the Philippines or in Central America. And when you get asked to put together a presentation like that, Jeff, I know you're not new to that world. Usually they really love it if you provide some type of a resource at the end, some book, which I know you're the king of, or some type of freebie that you can give the audience. And so I put together this thing that at the time I was so proud of. We called it our A to Z guide for hiring VAs overseas. And people were asking for this freebie like crazy after these events. I was getting hundreds of opt-ins and things like that. But the interesting thing is, months would go by and I would check in on them, see how they were doing. And less than 1% of the hundreds of people who wanted these documents actually were taking action on it. And another thing about me, I know you know, Jeff, is I love creating online courses, especially ones that are legal related. Indie Law has a mission to make the law as accessible as we can for entrepreneurs. And so my initial thought was, okay, what if I created a course around this? A lot of times when people pay, they pay attention. So I was asking my law firm owner friends, if I made this into a paid course and you paid for it, would you then follow the instructions and know how to put up job postings and things? And they were like, honestly, Joey, if I paid you, I would just want you to do it for me. So
Interesting
that
approach.
so that became the game that I wanted to play. And I mean, I love talking to you about this, Jeff, because I know you and I are so similar. So after months of just going into visionary mode, thinking, okay, how could this look, and talking with my team, we built out what we now call global vetted VAs, which is our super accessible way where it's not a course, it's actually a done for you service where you pay us once up front and we will send you 5 really highly qualified, highly trustworthy overseas VAs that we vetted. The expectation is you'll interview all 5 of them and then hire 1 or more of them to bring onto your team full time.
Excellent. Now, I just realized some of the people watching, you and I are using the jargon, the terminology VA. Would you describe what a VA is and what you think they're capable of, and why my audience of professionals should care?
Oh my gosh, I love that you asked that question. And I want to answer it with a couple of different layers. So in short, VA is short for virtual assistant. And this term isn't really that new. If you read certain books like the 4-Hour Work Week, or anything from Mike Michalowicz, or maybe Michael Hyatt, a lot of them are talking about the importance of virtual assistants. But there's a new insight that I'm realizing that we all need to be clear on, which is as the term is getting more mature, it's also losing some of its definition over time, because traditionally what a virtual assistant was thought of as is, how can we find someone who's virtual? At the time, that meant not local, probably not even the United States, who we can delegate work to at a fraction of the cost of what we would pay someone to do the work locally. I say that because over the past few years, due to COVID and also just due to the online business world becoming more tech savvy, more and more people are working virtually. And there are more and more people in the United States who might call themselves virtual assistants. I feel very strongly about this, which is that we need to stop calling everybody who can help you with your business remotely a virtual assistant.
Right.
Because the more broadly we use this word, the more useless it becomes. So when I'm talking about virtual assistants, I mean, because there is this ability to hire overseas in regions where you can pay them a living wage for well under $10 an hour, a virtual assistant is really something that you should think of as, what is someone who I can bring onto my team that I can delegate tasks to for $10 an hour or less, and have that be a living wage for them, and have those tasks genuinely be $10 an hour tasks, meaning it gets those really menial tasks, those lowest, I shouldn't say lowest value, but those lowest dollar time tasks that you're doing off of your plate so that you can focus on higher value activities.
And I think that's, for my audience, it's typically, coaches, consultants, accountants. There is a lot of administrative stuff that, if you were to pay somebody, you'd pay them as little as possible. My thought on that is, you don't want to be the one doing those tasks. So when it comes to the virtual assistants, as you define them, what are some common tasks that they excel at? And we'll talk about processes in a moment, but what are some of the things that we should be sending to someone else?
Yes. So I appreciate the way you asked the question. And I would say that there's no limitation on what you can send to. I mean, people are always coming up with creative things to give to their overseas VAs or overseas virtual assistants. But I would think about where are you spending your time doing things that you know you shouldn't be doing? If you have a podcast, are you still the one who is uploading those podcast episodes somewhere? When if you had a clear process, somebody could just be following those steps and upload those podcast episodes for you. are you feeling bogged down either by online courses that you've invested in, or just completely putting them to the side, and you have this huge pile of courses that you purchased that you just haven't taken action on? One of my favorite things to have new virtual assistants do with our company is say, okay, here are some courses that either we haven't actually gone through yet, or it's been a while. Go through the course, tell us what you learned.
I love that.
Another big one is, things like bookkeeping, even to an extent, some legal stuff. When we first brought on a bookkeeper, I realized that there was stuff, and I love my bookkeeper, but I knew that there were things that she was doing that I was paying her to do that were not super hard to do.
Right.
And she was so fantastic. She even said, like, Joey, I have a course that you could buy where you and your team can learn a lot of the stuff if you don't want to pay us as much. And so what I did was I bought that course from her, and I had my VA go through it. And now over 90% of all the bookkeeping and financial record keeping that we are doing is being done by someone who we brought on overseas. And every month, every quarter, they're gaining more and more mastery in those bookkeeping tasks.
I love it. Now, I'm going to address something I hear a lot from my people, because I am a huge advocate for finding assistance of whatever it is, wherever they are. But one of the things I get pushed back a lot is, what about the security? What about the privacy of the data? You're a lawyer and you deal with intellectual property, so I'm going to guess you have a unique perspective on that.
Yeah, I get that that's happened enough for people to be concerned. First off, I've never run into a security issue with my team. And so far, none of our global vetted VAs clients have run into that issue either. I think to an extent, this is one of those, if you actually stick your head under the bed and look at the boogie monster, it's not as scary as you think it is. The reality is that these overseas humans, they are looking for a long-time relationship with a business owner. They lose that if they just steal from you.
Right.
And so I'm a huge fan of leading my team with the core value of trust. And we say that trust is both given and earned. So how can you be starting that relationship with a sense of trust, but also, not giving them passwords and your social security number from day one? And the truth is that there are so many tasks that you could have someone do for you that requires little to no confidential information being shared. And so a lot of people, again, I referenced bookkeeping. That was something that we shifted the person to after 90 or so days of doing other stuff with our company. And when we started having them do bookkeeping tasks, we use QuickBooks. If you use something like that, then you can set the settings
Right.
so that other people can do things without having access to everything. Maybe it's a view only type of user account or something like that. That being said, one of my life mottos around my business is the more my business depends on me, the less it's worth. And if I'm the only one who holds all of the keys to certain secure information and something happens to me, then no one on my team can move forward.
Yeah,
so it was
waiting.
Yes. And I'm not saying rush to make those adjustments, but it was very important to me once I started thinking about my business really growing to, as quickly as I could and as effectively as I could, to make sure that there were people on the team who had access to everything, that creating that inner circle of trust within my high-level teammates.
I love it. Now, one of the things I personally believe is the importance of systems and processes, and I suspect that that's important to you. What are some of the things you recommend to people before they start looking at their first hire? What are some of the things they should do? And then once they made the hire, how can they make sure the systems are there to give them that sense of
Yes,
trust?
great question. So if you are not only thinking about hiring an overseas VA, but you're also wanting to do it yourself, first of all, props to you. I definitely want people to feel like they can take action there. I would strongly encourage that you take a step back and you try and paint the full picture of what it would look like to bring that person on, instead of just focusing on the next step. Meaning, I see so many people, they decide they want to hire someone and they can't mentally get past, okay, what am I going to put out on a job posting? And so they spend a bunch of time looking at where they should be putting the job posting. Then they spend a bunch of time putting together the language that needs to go in the job posting. And then they hit publish. They feel really great and it's awesome. But now they have all of these candidates applying and they don't know what to do. So step one, I would say step back and create a map for what the hiring and qualifying process will look like, instead of just taking baby steps along the hiring journey, because then it's really going to take a long time for you to end up with someone on your team. The other thing is that I would recommend two particular kinds of processes. One is what I call the SOP for your SOPs. So how can you create ideally this template of the starting draft of a process, so that whenever you or your teammates start building out new processes, instead of feel like you're having to start from square one, you can just copy and paste this kind of template SOP for SOPs.
I love that. And if I can interject, SOP is standard operating procedure.
Yes.
I used to just sort of fly by the seat of my pants. And then one day I went, wait a minute, I have a system for everything. Why don't I have a system for systems? And it's amazing how much faster everything goes when you have that starting point.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I hesitate to call this a system, but I really recommend that you put in place what I call an accountability chart. And this shows the different roles in your company and who's doing what. I emphasize this because a lot of business owners, instead of hearing the term accountability chart, they think organization chart, where you're putting the different kind of names associated with the company and who reports to who. Org charts can be great, but they're limiting for a number of reasons. The main is that they're dependent on the people, not the role. The beauty of an accountability chart is, even if it's just you can map out all the different roles that you're currently filling in. And you can see all of the different places that currently have your name next to it. And this is really a great visual to have in place when you start to bring on a VA, because you can pull up this accountability chart and zoom in somewhere on the chart and say, new VA, this is where I'm bringing you in. This is the specific role that I want you to be filling, either part-time or full-time, so that moving forward, your name will be around this task or responsibility instead of my name.
I love it. Now, you and I talked a while ago about this, but one of the mistakes I've made over and over is I hire a VA and then I sit back and wait for results. And you gave me some really, at the time, it was odd advice, but now I'm looking at it going, that is so brilliant. You talked about hiring two at once. So tell me about the philosophy behind that and what's the best and worst case scenario in that?
Yes. So a lot of people understandably have concerns of, what if I lose trust in one of them? What if they don't speak fluent English? What if one of them ghosts me or steals from me or whatever it is? It's because of that I say, okay, well, great, then just hire two at once. That way, if one of them doesn't work out, you don't have to go all the way back to square one. Now, as you said, there's kind of a worst case scenario benefit to that, which is a huge point of relief for a lot of business owners, because they're like, oh yeah, if I bring on two, it's less stressful. I'm not as concerned if one doesn't work out. I will say more often than not, both of them will work out great and you'll want to keep both of them. And the beauty of having two is it allows you to say to both of them, what are you liking and not liking as we're giving more work to you? How can we give you more of the work that's in your zone of genius that's really fulfilling for you, and clarify between the two of you how we can split up the work?
I love that. Now, you in that conversation, you also talked about a 90-day onboarding experience, and I think that's, people are wanting instant gratification. What does a typical onboarding experience look like for you when you're bringing somebody in?
Yeah, so we call our onboarding process our epic welcome. We want to make this as uncorporate sounding as it can be, because the truth is, have you heard that whole saying of like A players only work for A players kind of a thing? A lot of the global vetted VAs that we identify and give people, like they appreciate that we can help them find work, but they're not exactly desperate to find people. Like they know that they're pretty good. And so a lot of them are also being mindful of, okay, this is a company that I want to work for. And so it's really helpful to slap some personality and positive vibes on what you're doing. And so we call our onboarding experience for that reason our epic welcome, which includes a few different things that are pretty unique and next level for what we do. But first off, we try and make sure that the first few touch points they have, from that email that they get right after they sign the contract to their first call with us, is very much like a celebration, number one. And number two, that sense of there not being any homework right away.
I love that. And if I can interrupt for a second, I can't tell you how many jobs where, my first week, you're just there filling out paperwork. And it's like, when do I meet my colleagues? When do I see my office? So I love the epic welcome.
Yeah. So we've put a real emphasis on how can we start strong. I think about when I was in college, my university's orientation experience was just incredible. And so we really want people to feel like they're joining kind of a family that they're going to be spending, hopefully years with, and that they're excited about. So we have that aspect to it. And then we also have what we call our first victory. So that's our version of like the first assignment, the first task that you give them. We call it the first victory because the idea is that this is something that it's designed for them to win at.
I love it. So what would a typical first victory look like?
So there are different options for what you can do for a first victory. And there's no one right way to do it. But what we found, again, we want to make this fun. We want to make this easy. We want this to feel low effort. Again, going back to college, like I always appreciated my professors who like didn't really give any big homework like the first week. It was all just kind of syllabus day and discussions in class. So what we do when we first onboard people and bring them on is we send those official invites of, okay, here's your new email address. Here is where you go in terms of our task management software. Here's access to our Slack channel, our Slack workspace where you can navigate various channels. I say all of that because really the first thing that we want to do is just validate and confirm that they can access all the stuff that we just invited them into. So our first victory is super simple. We want you to use this free tool called Loom to record a screenshot video of yourself going through and joining these different things and poking around. And if you have any questions or if you can't access certain things, just say that in this video. Then hit end record and email it to me. And that's all it is.
I love it. Now I'm going to shift gears a little more practical for my audience. I know I've got people watching this going, Joey, this all sounds wonderful. it sounds like work. Tell me more about the globally vetted program, because I think that would be the obvious, a lot of my accountants would look at this and say, bringing in a VA is not my top best use of my time. So how do you help them?
Yes. So if you look at the market and if you're like, okay, this stuff seems heavy, what can I do to make this feel lighter? I live near a busy street in Chicago. I don't know if you can hear the siren, but there's always ambulances driving by at like really good times. So this is the universe telling us that this is a good topic to be diving into.
It's urgent, yes.
Yes. So remind me what the question was, Jeff.
The question was, how can somebody get help if it's not in their
Yes.
wheelhouse? Because I hear a lot, accountants especially, they think the only way to manage somebody is to stand over them and watch them. And I know you have a
Yes.
thought about managing people versus leading people, but how can somebody get help if they have no experience either hiring or offshoring or outsourcing?
Yeah. Well, first I'll talk about just the main options that you have and then how global vetted VAs fits in. So if you're wanting some assistance with this, if you want to say yes to bringing on overseas VAs, but you don't want to say yes to all the work that's involved, there are a bunch of options out there of what I call VA agencies, where you pay usually hundreds, if not thousands of dollars a month for a certain set of hours that some VA will do for you. And the benefits to that type of a structure are you don't have to worry about managing the person. You don't have to worry about paying them. You just pay this VA service. But there are significant downsides that we were seeing as well with these types of things. They can be very helpful, but number one, there's usually some type of a limit where you have to be paying for X number of hours a month. And if you're not using those hours, you still have to pay, like a subscription plan. There's also the sense that since they're not really your people, you don't control them. You might get assigned to someone new. A lot of times there's frustration where either the VA that you get assigned to doesn't do a good job, and you have to just kind of keep going to customer support saying, give me someone else, or they're amazing and you would rather just hire them directly, but there's a very expensive buyout clause.
Right.
And so when my team and I were looking at how we can add value to the space, we decided to not go in that agency direction. I want to be very clear here because a lot of people who have done research on that assume that we are that type of a VA agency. So when you work with global vetted VAs, it's a one-time upfront investment. We will look through our network of candidates that we vetted in the past, and we'll give you 5 of our best names of who we think would be good fits for you. You then get to interview those people, hire them directly. So there's a huge cost savings component to this because there's no middleman.
Yeah.
There's a huge sense of leadership and ownership because they become yours directly.
So
and of course, it's a
team.
huge time saving because you don't have to put out job postings and things.
Right. Okay. Excellent. So how can somebody learn more about the globally vetted VAs program, or just do a little bit of more research? Or you mentioned that resource you were giving away once upon a time. Is that still available?
It still is available, but we will be turning it into a paid course soon. Just because, again, we keep seeing people take it and not using it. But you can learn more about global vetted VAs at globalvettedvas.com. You can also go to our Facebook group, The Business Growth Advantage, where we have various resources and trainings and other conversations to really help you as you build out your overseas team.
I love it. And I'll put links to both the Facebook group and the Global Vetted VA site on in the show notes. Now, Joey, there's so much you and I could talk about, and unfortunately, I want to keep this reasonable time length for you and for my listeners. Is there anything I should have asked you about hiring a VA that I haven't asked you?
I mean, you asked me some amazing questions, Jeff. So I think that you get gold stars across the board there.
Yay.
I will say, I came across a Instagram story this morning that was just, it resonated with me so deeply. And I knew when I heard it that it would make sense to share it here. And it was one of those well done edited clips, right? From some podcast. But the host of the podcast said, it's time that we started viewing busy as a bad word. Because when we say that we're busy, it means that our time is being spent doing something that we don't want to do, that's outside of our control. And it's one of my goals right now for myself and with the clients that I'm working with, to make us all feel as little busy as possible. And by working with a global vetted VA or some overseas VA, you're doing that work of getting that busy work off of your plate. And as someone who is getting closer and closer to busy free days, like, that is the promise of entrepreneurship that we're all chasing.
I love that. And, it's a fascinating thing. We wear busy like it's this badge of honor, but really, I used to work 100-hour weeks, and I realized just how lazy I was because I wasn't filtering anything. It was just whatever came at me, I tackled it.
Yeah.
And, being busy was just, well, look at me, I'm working 100-hour weeks, and, somebody who works less is thought to be worth less. But now, as context, you run a very successful law firm. How many billable hours are you putting in a month now?
Less than 4.
Less than 4. So anybody listening, and I say this for the accountants out there too, we're taught to be really good at the thing that generates the revenue, but we don't stop and think about the business and how we should separate ourselves from it. So
that's so true. Employees are focused on making money. Business owners need to be focused on making machines that make money.
I love it. I love it. Now, Joey, I could talk to you for hours, but for my audience's sake, I'll leave them wanting more. So for them, if they want to learn more about globally vetted VAs, they can either go to your website or to your Facebook group. Now, rumor has it you have a book coming out. When can I expect to see that?
Oh, that is a great question. The goal is early 2023.
Awesome. I have a spot on my bookshelf just waiting for an autographed copy of Joey's book. So
you'll get it.
Excellent.
Thanks for your support.
I want to thank you for your time, and I'll let you throw a parting comment to my audience, and then we'll wrap up the recording.
Well, so this is live streamed and it's going to be a podcast, correct?
It's going to be a podcast. It's not live streamed.
Okay. I wanted to confirm at least that it was going to be a podcast, because I wanted to say this. If you made it this far, then you're a fan of Jeff's, to say the least. So if you haven't already done so, go leave him a podcast review. It doesn't take much time, and it is one of the most supportive things that you can do to just thank Jeff, support what he's doing, and help him get the word out about this podcast to others.
Excellent. Well, Joey, I really, really appreciate you taking the time. And on behalf of my audience, I want to thank you for your great insight into the world of virtual assistants.
My pleasure. Thanks, Jeff.